Hello and welcome back to our final module on epistemology. And we're going to be finishing up this unit by looking at the work of philosopher and theologian Father Bernard Lonergan, and specifically what he has to share on epistemology and how we seek self-knowledge. So who was Bernard? Bernard Lonergan was born in Canada, in Buckingham, Canada, at the beginning of the 1900s. He entered the Society of Jesus, better known as the Jesuits. It's a Catholic religious order of priests and brothers. He was ordained a Catholic priest in 1936 after studying at the famed Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome. He attained his doctorate and later taught at a variety of colleges and universities, both within Canada and in the United States, most notably in the United States at Harvard University and Boston College. He certainly was influenced by the classicist tradition that we've come to know in this course, including the works of Plato, Augustine, Aquinas, and John Henry Newman, whom we've also learned about, in part because in his studies of being a Catholic priest, these were some of the leading philosophers, theologians of that train of thought. One of the things about Lonergan is he took these insights from theology and attempted to mesh them with the methodologies and insights from the scientific method and methods of the natural sciences. Really what Lonergan was after is, can you develop a method, in as much as we're speaking about epistemology, because his work covered much more discourses than just epistemology, in as much as his attempt to create a method geared from the natural sciences, can we take the procedures and the methods that are used in the sciences and instead use them to develop a more fundamental, overarching method for knowing? And so he really focused on questions of cognition, epistemology, and metaphysics. How do we know? What do we do when we're knowing? And what is the nature of reality? He's considered one of the greatest philosophers and theologians of the 20th century, with one of his greatest works being the work Insight. So while he covered a vast variety of topics, especially in theology, his work on developing a method, a fundamental overarching method for the human experience, if you will, is what we're going to focus on, because it helps us to know what are we doing when we're knowing, and how does it help us to better understand ourselves through experience. So to the point on method. So method in general, we can think of methods as a procedure for discovering an unknown, which leads to repeated results. So once we've discovered what's unknown and made it known, we can use that in a methodical way to reach a result. The transcendental method, which is what we're referring to as Lonergan's method, aims to operate in a similar way as the natural sciences. It tries to create a procedure for discovering what is unknown and then reusing that procedure to attain repeated results, to continually discover what is unknown and to make it known. So in this way, we can think of the transcendental method as an epistemological method by which we come to discover knowledge, and in particular, in this case, self-knowledge. So really what Lonergan is doing is he's taking the scientific methods of his day and using it to form a method of learning by reflecting on experiences and achievements. That's what we can call the transcendental method, a method of learning through reflection on experiences and achievements to attain knowledge and self-knowledge. A method aims at increasing the objective value of judgments through repeatable actions. In other words, it helps us to make judgments and come to objective knowledge. But one of the things that Lonergan is going to point out is that can only come through subjective experiences. This transcendental method can also be called the human method, because rather than dealing with the facts found in scientific method, it deals with persons and experiences. This is really a method for a living. Lonergan referred to this as the procedures of the human mind. It's a way of coming to understand how can we live so as to better understand ourselves and the world around us. So in this way, Lonergan talks about a process of self-appropriation, meaning a process of one's own rational self-consciousness clearly and distinctly taking possession of itself. In other words, a process by which we come to understand ourselves and our experience and thus develop a better understanding of who we are and of the world around us. Really the nitty-gritty of epistemology, but very human-focused, understanding ourselves. So we can think of then Lonergan really being affected by what we might call a theology of action. In other words, that similar to Kant and the other philosophers that we've covered in this module, Aquinas and Newman, you'll notice that the overarching theme and trend is the necessity for knowledge to be based in this life, in concrete action, and in experience. That we are bound by humans to this realm, to this reality, and so we can only create knowledge through our interaction with this reality. That's why metaphysics and epistemology are so closely connected. That in our trying to understand the nature of reality, we come to understand, well, how in trying to understand reality do we even understand? How do we build knowledge? So Lonergan really keeps with this train of thought. It has to be based in experience. He emphasized that to truly know something, something cannot remain abstract. Remember we covered abstraction in Newman, that we can know things in an abstract idea, but then to truly know something, it has to be based in experience. Lonergan going to say, to truly know something, it can't remain an abstract idea. It must be carried out and lived out in our actions. Our knowledge is first rooted in experience. So as a result, his transcendental method is going to be really focused on gathering data information from this life. Again, not too dissimilar from Kant and the idea of the necessity of the data in this life. This transcendental method can also be thought as an incarnational method. Remember, he's very much influenced by the Catholic intellectual tradition. The idea of the incarnation, that God became flesh, entered into our world. Incarnational really refers to fleshiness. The idea, again, that we can only come to know things by interacting physically with the world. And only by interacting physically with the world and making knowledge real can things like faith and knowledge of God be made real. So the culminating principle of his method is love. It only follows a life in which our judgments and knowledge are authentically lived. Why? Because as we're going to see, again, his method is rooted in a belief in God. The incarnation is God becoming man out of love. And so ultimately, the quest for self-knowledge ends in an understanding not only of self-love, but love for the world. For then, only through love do we allow God to enter into our depths and to be poured out into us. Just as a note, it probably is self-proclaiming, self-evident, but just to talk about the specifics of his method, of the transcendental method, is while epistemology is, to a certain degree, is trying to attain objective knowledge. In other words, it's seeking truth, at least in the classicist tradition of philosophy. Because he's using a method with similar aims of the scientific method to understand reality in an objective way, but it's saying that we can only get knowledge through the physical world. And as we remember from Kant, our experiences are unique to us, and so therefore can be considered subjective. Lonergan is going to acknowledge that while we aim for objectivity, aka truth, knowing ultimates, we can only attain that through subjectivity. In other words, things that are specific to us and not across the board. It's another way of referring to the fact that our experiences are rooted in ourselves, but Lonergan wants us to use our experiences to try to seek objective truth and knowledge. So the transcendental method tries to seek objectivity, but understands that it comes through subjective experiences. So what is this transcendental method? We can think of the method as having 5 steps. It's a general method that can simply be applied to all our experiences. Remember, procedure to make the known unknown that then can be repeated. So think of these 5 steps as procedures to make the unknown of our experiences, of ourselves, known, so that we can create self-knowledge and knowledge of the world around us. And it's such that we can then repeat these steps again and again to continue learning and knowing more about ourselves and the world around us. So the first step, which can be referred to as the empirical level, is be attentive. Be open to the data of lived experiences. So remember, every time we're experiencing the world, our experiences give us data, information about ourselves, about the world around us. So in this first step is, Lonergan asks us to simply observe and gather data through our senses. What do we see, smell, taste, hear, feel in our experiences, in our interactions with the world and people around us? This is giving us information. Next, we can refer to as the intellectual level, be understanding. Now that we have that data, investigate and try to comprehend the data offered through our experience. Inquire into why did it happen? Why did I experience that? And to the details of that. Imagine, conceive, make deductions based on that information so as to attempt to simply comprehend the information. So taking the information, step one, try to understand what you experienced in step two. Step three, consider the rational level. Be reasonable. Make a judgment, a reasonable judgment based on reason, following your understanding of a situation or reality. So once you've tried to comprehend your experience, you have to reflect on it. And this is the Jesuit and Lonergan coming out, because in the side of Jesus, Jesuit spirituality, there's a deep sense of spirituality, or the examine, by which we reflect back on our day to understand where God came in, to understand ourselves. So this is Lonergan's Jesuitness, so to speak, coming out. He's asking us to, before we make a judgment, reflect on it, check for doubts, evaluate our understanding experience, and then so we can make a judgment where we try to reach certitude, as Newman would say. And this is it shows his influence by Newman. The fourth level, or the responsible level, be authentic. This is ultimately a big goal of Lonergan, is authenticity, that through self-knowledge we can truly be ourselves. So once we've taken in the data of our experiences, we've tried to investigate and understand it. We've reflected on it so as to know what judgment to make about it. What has been made known now that we've reflected on our experiences? Now stick with that judgment so as to move forward. Decide how to express and enact what you've learned, how to put it into words, how to put it into your life, so as to make your judgment open. And lastly, and this was referring to the last slide as well, the last step that Lonergan puts forward is be in love. Take a posture in your life that follows authenticity, wherein you let God work in you and through you. Allow for a love of God to inspire you to take a disposition of love, both for yourself and for others. Why is this important? Because this is where the information the data that we've taken in, that we've investigated, that we've reflected upon, and that we've made a judgment upon is then put into action. And in the Catholic intellectual tradition, and especially in his Jesuit spirituality, Lonergan was going to say that the only way we can put things into action as Christians is going to be in love. And he'll invite other people of good faith to also take the similar disposition. So be open to the data of your lived experiences, investigate and try to comprehend and understand what you experienced, reflect on it so as to make a judgment upon it, be authentic and follow through on the judgment, on what has been made known, and then enact it in love into the world. So, and this is reflective of his major work, Insight, that through this process, when we think especially of steps 2 and 3, we might think of the idea Lonergan puts forth that we are generating insights. Insights are moments of this method at work. When we're trying to comprehend and reflect upon our experiences, we garner insights. Insights occur when we are brought to a new realization that demands change in our action. When you have that moment, aha, and you're like, oh, or those kinds of moments where even if you knew something, but you have an insight that takes you deeper into that piece of knowledge. You have a new realization. Lonergan, in that last step of to love, is then going to say, now that you've had that insight and realization, you then have to act on it. So this method is going to have to call us to do things. We can't just create knowledge for the sake of knowledge. We have to then go do something with this knowledge in the world for ourselves and for others. Insights occur when we allow the method to work through an openness to being attentive and reflective to our lived reality. In other words, we gain insights or self-knowledge or insights into the world by using the method, by being open to experiences, being attentive to what they're telling us, to reflecting upon it. So in other words, we can say that what does the transcendental method produce? It produces greater insight. This is what Lonergan refers to as that self-appropriation, that process by which we become more conscious and aware of who we are and the world around us. So in other words, insights are acts of understanding. Insights are foundational to Lonergan's understanding of knowledge and epistemology. They're the new understanding of knowledge that promotes us to verification. So in other words, through insights, we can reach certitude, as Newman would put in his own words. So the transcendental method leads to generating insights that we're called to put into action, and it's through formulating insight that we actually develop self-knowledge, and our knowledge really of just existence grows. So this is to the point of self-knowledge, is that while we can talk about generating knowledge for the world around us, Lonergan is really focused on generating self-knowledge, generating insights upon ourselves that can apply to ourselves. Again, the idea of self-appropriation. What is the ultimate goal then? As I pointed out earlier, it's how can we live authentically ourselves? Put it to you this way. How many people do you know are probably not comfortable in their own skin? Probably don't have a good sense of self-love, self-esteem, are struggling to know who they are, their purpose, and where they fit into this world. Being able to know that and to commit to that is authenticity. So when we think of the transcendental method, how do we come to authentically be ourselves? We are open to our experiences. We try to understand our experiences. We try to reflect on them. And through that reflect on, well, then who am I? And come to that understanding through our experiences. And then once we've generated those insights about ourselves, we put them into action with love always leading the way. That we err on the side of caution, of love, of really support to oneself. And in doing that, we can authentically be ourselves. One of the most terrible things, according to Lonergan, we can do is to be inauthentic, because living inauthentically leads to innumerable problems. Being inauthentic means we are not open to the experiences of this life. We are not open to the data that experiences give us. So in other words, when we live authentically as ourselves, we can better engage in epistemology. We can better be open to the data of our lived experiences. We can better reflect and comprehend on them so as to better know ourselves. In other words, the more that we can be authentic to the knowledge that we have uncovered again and again and build upon ourselves, we know more. When we're inauthentic, when we're not genuine and try to live a fake life, it leads to innumerable problems. Think, for instance, of the issue of perhaps social media, where social media can provide great good, but people on social media may live a fake life. They only post what you want people to see. That's being inauthentic. Now, to the person who's trying to process that data without knowing that that's inauthentic, now you have really a inaccurate construction of reality. You think that reality is these pictures that people are putting out. That you think they're having a much better life than you are. But that reality, or metaphysics, is inaccurate because the data that's being put out is inaccurate. So you create bad knowledge, epistemology, because you have bad information, because people are being inauthentic. So that might be a very trivial way of showing how inauthenticity actually inhibits epistemology. This is Lonergan's point. Rather, if everyone is authentic, we'd have a better understanding of reality, because we'd have the right information to work with, and then we could better reflect upon it and comprehend it. Because then we might be left saying, why is everyone seemingly having a better life on social media than I am? What's wrong with me? And we're reflecting on this, but we might draw ourselves insane and come to conclusions that are difficult. So authenticity is going to be an underlying important factor not only as an end goal to the transcendental method, but in actually engaging in the transcendental method. Can we be authentic to ourselves and genuine in engaging in the process? So, in conclusion, Lonergan wants us to develop epistemology, reach objectivity through our subjective experiences, that we can only build knowledge by engaging with the world around us. How do we do that? We use the transcendental method. We are attentive to the data of our experiences. We try to understand it. We then try to reflect upon it so as to better comprehend it rationally. We make a judgment based on this information of what is knowledge, what can be known, and we stick to it, and we then try to enact it in love. This process generates insights about ourselves and the world around us. And through acting upon these insights, because these insights call us to action, we can authentically be ourselves and have a better sense of self-knowledge. So at this point, we invite you to go to the rest of the module materials and complete the questions for this module.